I want to eradicate noise from this world. The noise, the hissing, the buzzing, all of it, I want it gone. When I press the big red button to record what I'm doing, I want to hear a perfectly clean, crispy signal and not the added addition of some sounds that come because the universe simply exists, right? So the problem is that when I buy gear to make sounds with, whether it's a microphone or a guitar or any other instrument, I want to be able to hear that instrument in its perfect entirety, right? So many people waste a lot of money on gadgets and gear that they try to use in order to get rid of the noise in their situation, but many times it just doesn't work that way. In this video, I want to teach you how to get rid of noise, what is noise exactly, and what gadgets you can use in specific situations in order to minimize it as much as possible, including very cheap alternatives to a pretty much all-rounded approach, right? Whatever noise you have, there are cheap ways to get rid of it, but it's not at the source. It's post-processing type of stuff. So let's go ahead and get right in to what I consider the anti-noise warfare manual. All right, so first question really is, what is noise? And the answer is, it's basically just what happens when particles in the universe, the matter that we all exist and are made out of, bump together. So what they call that is thermal noise. That's like the basis behind every other noise ever. And generally, as things get hotter or more active, such as in electrical devices when you're pushing electrons at a fast rate through a lot of different materials, mostly conductors, that noise gets exponentially increased, right? That's why when you plug in your device into a bunch of other electrical devices and the signal travels along those devices in order to eventually reach our speakers and come out at us, well, noise compiles and adds up across every single device and every single media that you kind of push it through. And then eventually leading to a hissing, buzzing, whatever. It kind of takes on the characteristics of the material over time. So let's go ahead and break down what the different pieces are that are going to introduce noise. All right, so to stay true to my audience, we're going to be sticking with an audio example because video has the same problems with noise as well. So let's go ahead and get started. First, you've got your instrument, right? And then you've got your cables and your lines in between all the other components. Then you've got perhaps an amplifier or a preamplifier. You've got more cables. You've got an amplifier, an actual one. Then you've got your processing, whether that's signals or maybe you're sending it to the computer. You've got more cables. Then you've got either a speaker or an amplifier, then a speaker. You've also got the routing and the cables that go to your computer. You've got your processing within there. And then eventually it comes to you via headphones, more cables, and other things like that. Now, the one that most people don't really think of is how are you powering all these devices, right? You've got something plugged into the wall, and in that wall, guess what? You're getting supposedly 60 hertz coming to you via the power company that you pay for. But the problem is that when you plug other devices into the wall and other devices throughout your entire house, well, you're sharing that same line that's coming in, relatively speaking. It eventually goes to the breaker and it splits up a little bit, via the breakers, but it's not completely isolated. So other things will pollute the power source that all of your other electrical devices are being fed. It's like drinking dirty water after like 5 other people have been drinking from the same cup. It just happens. And so, you're going to want to clean that up if you eventually want to have a perfectly pristine sound source, right? So that's what we've got. We've got the instrument, we've got the cabling, the amps, the preamps, and then the outputs and the powers and the power supply. And that's all over the place. But usually when you're in a studio, you're not going to clean the power for the entire house. You're going to clean the power for what you're plugging in. And that's more than reasonable. And it's definitely more cost effective. So let's go ahead and get into solutions. So for the instruments, for microphones, unless you just have kind of a junker microphone you didn't pay that much money for, well, it's not going to really be too much of a big deal. You really got to worry about the wire in that case. But for guitars, Well, those electronics in your guitar, they're basic circuits. So RF and EMF really do have a big effect on what happens inside of an electric guitar. So the best route for, in my opinion, is A, make sure that you don't have any corroded electronics and replace them if you can, or have a guitar tech do it for you. Otherwise, copper foil, if you line the inside and around your electronics the best you can with copper foil, that does a enormous wonder for it. And the reason why, the reason why I don't recommend using aluminum foil is because aluminum foil is a very bad conductor. I mean, it is a conductor, but compared to copper foil, it's significantly worse. When you surround the electronics in your guitar with copper foil, you make what is called a Faraday cage, and charge from the external portion of it does not get in, and it doesn't contaminate the electronics inside of your guitar. So your first step, and likely maybe not the cheapest depending on how much stuff you have running through your studio, but the first step is generally getting better cables. And cables that are not EM and EF shielded and have good conductive surroundings and are, very well constructed with good connectors, they're just not going to do the job you want them to do. So I've got one cable that I use throughout my entire studio. I'm not affiliated. I don't get paid to say this or anything, but they're very, very good. They're very good cables. They're called, world's best cables. They're made out of Mogami cables, and they're made with Neutrik connectors. They're pretty much, to me, like the best you can get for a goddamn bang for your buck right here. $28 for a 5-foot cable. If you want a Mogami cable, whoops, I can't type. So if you want a Mogami cable, so like right here, you got a 3-foot Mogami cable. It costs $68. You get a 5-foot one for $28. I mean, there's really not much comparison here. All right, so the next part is you're going to be looking at your amp or your audio interface, preamps, this and that. Now, what you really want to look for as far as noise is concerned is A, the fact that they use quality components, because that makes a big difference, and also what they call dynamic range. So in this example, we got the brand new Scarlett 2i2 4th Gen. I don't have this device, I have another device, but this one is brand new and they've improved their stuff. So right here, they have 120 dB of dynamic range. Now, generally, you're going to get in the neighborhood of, in the very bad area, 105 dB of dynamic range is terrible. But once you pass 115, 112 to 115, you're looking pretty good. 10 dB of dynamic range is quite significant. So once you get over like 115 area, you're looking at real good stuff. So what is dynamic range then? Dynamic range is the difference between the lowest sound you can possibly gather from it and the highest, and its ability to do both basically right next to each other. So you can imagine a very, very quiet sound and a very, very loud sound one sample apart, and that's what it can do. So it can do 120 dB of dynamic range, which is very, very nice. If you take a look at universal audio interface, which these are like, the end-all, be-all, go-to for a lot of folks. Now, if you go to the universal audio Apollo, everybody seems to want to get one of these. Dynamic range. So this one is 127 dB of dynamic range. Pretty dang good. Now, let's give you just one last example. Let's see, Neumann, I think it's called the MT48. I think that's what this one is. Yeah. Now, let's see, dynamic range of 136 dB. That's bonkers in like the world of, trying to reduce noise and having enormous amounts of differentiation between your samples and how much sound you can put through and variation. That's amazing. So that's really kind of the difference in like just quality, right? You're going from 120 to 127 or 28, and then this is 136. Now, the difference between 120 and 136 dB of dynamic range is vast. Every 10 dB is an order of magnitude. So, I mean, if you think about going from 10 to 100 or 100 to 1,000, yeah, it's sick. So, Either way, that's what you're looking at. That's dynamic range, and that's what you really want to pay attention to when you're getting audio devices for noise-related things. And it generally tells the quality of the audio interface in general. So that's that. So the next thing you're really going to want to think about is going to be your power, because your speakers aren't going to introduce that much noise unless the electronics are just faulty. And I want to assume that you guys can generally tell when you have a piece of junk sitting on your desk. So your power. So your power cleanliness is really going to be the other big thing that you want to pay attention to. And so here, let me go ahead and get back on Sweetwater. Power conditioner. So a power conditioner is basically what I mentioned before. You have a whole bunch of devices going into your outlets throughout your entire house. Every time a new one comes in, it's dirtying the power supply by just a little bit, depending on the device. If you have something that's pushing power and sucking power quite frequently and is doing that without really kind of filtering itself out and making it clean again, like I said, it's like drinking a cup of water after 7 other people just drank from it themselves. They leave a little bit of residue from their mouth behind. And that's kind of what your devices are getting from every other thing inside of your home. So that's what you really want to think about. So now we got these things right here. These are power conditioners. And these ones will, for the most part, do the job. The one that my friend had gone and got because I'd recommended it to him, I believe this is the one that he went and got. It's just a Furman power conditioner. And what you do is you plug your devices into the back here, and it plugs in itself. So basically, it's taking the power from your home, providing it to all the devices that you plug it into, and keeping it extremely stable and consistent, and filtering out anything other than the 60 hertz frequency that it wants. So these are very, very useful devices, especially when you're dealing with noise and hum from outside sources and dealing with amplifiers that, for say, you're just plugging your guitar into an amplifier and you're hearing that 60 hertz hum come through. That's so well known for happening. Yeah, these things will definitely do the trick. These are unbelievably good devices. These are rack mounted. Black Lion Audio makes probably some of the best power conditioners on the market, hands down. And they've got things that go far beyond just simple power conditioning. Well, these voltage regulators make sure that no matter what the draw is from your other devices, it's maintaining that same level of voltage. Awesome, awesome stuff. I mean, it's a little bit overboard for most people. You don't need all that. So, I mean, I'd recommend probably going with something like this, the power conditioner, and it'll work just fine. People that I've helped eliminate noise from their studios have sworn by these things. I mean, they had noise, they're hearing it. It's very much audible. And then they plug these things in and it drops the noise by 75%. You replace your cables, you got another 20% or so. And then you make sure that you got a good dynamic range on the audio interface that you're using or the power amp or something like that. You're basically looking at almost no noise throughout your entire studio. It's fantastic stuff. But that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, aside from that, you're really not going to be able to do too much, And I think it's a relatively clean amount of solutions. If you were to go and replace all this stuff, you're looking at $100 for the power conditioner. If you're getting like 3 or 4 cables for the world's best cables, you're looking at 100, 150. You're looking at $250 to get rid of your noise inside your house or inside your studio, depending on it can increase dramatically depending on what solution you're picking. Either from like $250 to like $1,300 to $2,000. Pretty quick. It goes pretty quick, but depends on the solution. But either way, guys, I hope you got something out of this. I really do have like a passion for teaching people about how to get rid of noise and how to improve your signal quality. It's my day-to-day job as a signals engineer. Let me know if you have any questions, concerns. If anything I said doesn't make sense, I'll try to answer any questions. But yeah, just let me know. Appreciate you guys sticking around. And we'll catch you on the flippy floppy. Ciao for now, y'all.